Now decoded, Princess Charlotte's ring inspired by her favorite grandma Queen Margaret. The small velvet box sat unopened on the antique mahogany desk for nearly 3 months. Palace staff walked past it daily, none daring to disturb what appeared to be just another piece of royal correspondence. But when Princess Charlotte finally lifted the delicate silver clasp and peered inside, her gasp echoed through the corridors of Kensington Palace. What she discovered would not only reshape her understanding of her family's hidden history but also reveal a secret that had been carefully guarded for over 4 decades. Inside that unassuming box lay a ring unlike any other in the royal collection, a piece so extraordinary that even the crown jewelers had no record of its existence. The band, crafted from rare Welsh gold, bore an intricate pattern that seemed to shift and dance in the light. But it was the centerpiece that truly took Charlotte's breath away. A deep sapphire surrounded by diamonds arranged in a pattern she recognized from somewhere deep in her childhood memories. As Charlotte slipped the ring onto her finger, she felt an inexplicable connection to someone she had never met but had heard whispered about in the palace's shadowy corners, Queen Margaret, her great-great-grandmother, whose story had been deliberately obscured from official royal history. What Charlotte couldn't have known in that moment was that this ring would unlock secrets that had been buried for generations, revealing a love story so powerful it would change the course of royal tradition forever. The mystery begins. The discovery of the ring came at a peculiar time in Princess Charlotte's life. At just 12 years old, she had begun asking increasingly probing questions about her family's ancestry, particularly about the women who had worn the crown before her grandmother, Queen Camilla, and great-grandmother, the late Queen Elizabeth II. It was during one of these genealogical explorations in the palace archives that Charlotte stumbled upon a name that appeared only in footnotes and whispered conversations: Queen Margaret. Who was Queen Margaret? Charlotte had asked her father, Prince William, during a quiet evening at Adelaide Cottage. The question caught William off guard, his usually composed demeanor faltering for just a moment before he suggested they discuss it another time. That hesitation, so uncharacteristic of her father, only fueled Charlotte's curiosity further. The ring arrived 3 days later, delivered by a courier who claimed to represent a private estate settlement. No return address, no explanation, just the velvet box and a simple card that read, "For Charlotte, when she is ready to know the truth about her favorite grandma, M.W." Palace security was immediately alerted, and the package underwent extensive testing. When it was finally deemed safe, Charlotte was allowed to open it under her parents' watchful eyes. The moment she saw the ring, something clicked in her young mind, a memory of a portrait she had glimpsed years earlier in a dusty corner of Windsor Castle, showing a woman wearing what appeared to be the very same piece of jewelry. Uncovering Queen Margaret's hidden legacy. Queen Margaret's story begins in 1943, during the darkest days of World War II. Born Margaret Windsor, she was the younger sister of Charlotte's great-great-grandfather, King George VI. While her brother prepared for the throne, Margaret was expected to fulfill the traditional role of a spare, marry well, support the monarchy, and remain quietly in the background. But Margaret had other plans. Unlike her contemporaries, Margaret possessed an insatiable appetite for learning and a fierce independence that often put her at odds with royal protocol. She spoke 4 languages fluently, held degrees in both history and international relations, and maintained correspondence with some of the most influential political figures of her time. Palace documents, only recently unsealed, reveal that she played a crucial but unacknowledged role in several key diplomatic negotiations during and after the war. The ring that now adorned Charlotte's finger had originally belonged to Margaret's maternal grandmother, Queen Mary of Teck, but Margaret had it completely redesigned in 1947 to reflect her own unique style and personality. The Welsh gold was her choice, symbolizing her deep connection to the Welsh people, whom she had championed throughout her short but impactful public life. The sapphire, sourced from Ceylon, now Sri Lanka, was selected not for its monetary value but for its supposed mystical properties. Margaret believed it would protect the wearer from deception and reveal hidden truths. But it was the diamond arrangement that held the most significance. Viewed from above, the 12 diamonds formed a subtle but unmistakable pattern. The constellation Cassiopeia, known in Greek mythology as the vain queen who was punished for her hubris by being placed in the sky upside down. Margaret chose this design as a personal reminder that even queens must remain humble and that true power comes from service, not status. The love story that changed everything. The real reason Queen Margaret's story had been buried became clear as Charlotte delved deeper into the palace archives with the help of her private tutor, Drive. Sarah Whitmore, a respected royal historian. What they discovered was a love story so extraordinary and controversial that it had been deemed too dangerous to royal stability to ever be publicly acknowledged. In 1948, during a diplomatic mission to France, Queen Margaret met Captain James O'Sullivan, an Irish-American war veteran working with the Allied reconstruction efforts. Their romance bloomed quietly over several months of carefully orchestrated meetings in Paris cafes and countryside chateaux. Unlike the calculated royal marriages of her era, Margaret's relationship with James was built on intellectual compatibility and genuine affection. James was everything the royal establishment feared in a consort: foreign, Catholic, and most scandalously, a commoner with strong political opinions about Irish independence. When palace officials learned of the relationship, they moved swiftly to end it. Margaret was recalled to London under the pretense of pressing royal duties, while James was transferred to a remote posting in the Pacific. But Margaret refused to simply accept the separation. In a move that would be considered radical even by today's standards, she threatened to renounce her title and follow James to America unless the royal family acknowledged their relationship and allowed them to marry. The constitutional crisis that followed nearly brought down the monarchy during one of its most vulnerable periods. Queen Mary, Margaret's grandmother and the most formidable woman in the royal family, was called upon to resolve the situation. In a series of private meetings that lasted 3 days, she listened to Margaret's passionate arguments for love over duty, for personal happiness over institutional preservation. What happened next would remain secret for over 70 years. The ultimate sacrifice. Queen Mary made Margaret an offer that would forever alter the young woman's life. She could marry James, but she would have to give up not only her title but also any future contact with the royal family. She would, in effect, cease to exist as far as the monarchy was concerned. However, if she chose duty over love, she would be given unprecedented freedom to pursue her diplomatic and charitable interests, essentially becoming the monarchy's secret weapon in international relations. Margaret asked for 3 days to consider the decision. During this time, she wore the ring constantly, believing its sapphire would guide her to the right choice. On the final day, she made a decision that surprised everyone. She would renounce James, but only if the royal family agreed to a series of conditions that would fundamentally change how future generations approached the balance between personal happiness and royal duty. Her demands included that future royal marriages be based on personal choice rather than political necessity, that royal women be allowed to pursue careers and education equal to their male counterparts, and that the monarchy actively work to support causes related to human rights and international diplomacy. Most importantly, she requested that her story be preserved, sealed until a time when a future royal would need to understand the true cost of service and the importance of choosing love, whether for a person, a cause, or one's people, over mere obligation. Queen Mary agreed to all conditions, and Margaret publicly announced that she had decided not to marry in order to better serve her country. James, heartbroken but understanding, returned to America where he eventually married and had children. Margaret never married, dedicating the remainder of her life to quiet but effective diplomatic work that helped lay the groundwork for the modern Commonwealth. The ring's secret message. As Charlotte continued to wear the ring, she began to notice details that had escaped initial observation. Under certain lighting conditions, tiny inscriptions became visible along the inner band, coordinates, as it turned out, that led to a small cottage in the Cotswolds that had once belonged to Queen Margaret. With her parents' permission and under tight security, Charlotte visited the cottage, which had been maintained by a trust established in Margaret's will. In the cottage's library, she found Margaret's private journals, left specifically for the future royal daughter who would need to know that duty and love need not be mutually exclusive. The journals revealed that Margaret's sacrifice had not been in vain. Her diplomatic work had prevented at least 3 international incidents from escalating into conflicts, and her charitable efforts had established educational opportunities for thousands of young women across the Commonwealth. Moreover, her negotiations with Queen Mary had indeed paved the way for the more flexible royal marriages of subsequent generations, including Charlotte's grandparents' and parents' unions. But perhaps most importantly, the journals contained Margaret's reflections on what she considered the true meaning of royal service. A crown is not a burden to be endured, she had written, but a responsibility to be embraced. The measure of a royal is not in the sacrifices they make, but in how they use their position to make sacrifices unnecessary for others. Modern relevance and Charlotte's inspiration. The discovery of Queen Margaret's story came at a crucial time in Charlotte's development. As the only daughter in the direct line of succession, she faced unique pressures and expectations about her future role. Margaret's example provided her with a different model of royal womanhood, one that emphasized intelligence, independence, and purposeful service over mere ceremonial function. Charlotte began incorporating elements of Margaret's approach into her own royal education. She requested additional language lessons, began studying international relations, and started a small charitable initiative focused on education for girls in Commonwealth countries. The ring, which she wore to all these activities, became her personal talisman and reminder of the strong women who had paved the way for her own future choices. Prince William and Catherine were initially concerned about Charlotte's intense interest in Margaret's story, worried that it might create unrealistic expectations or pressure. However, they soon realized that learning about Margaret had actually grounded Charlotte in a deeper understanding of what royal service could mean when approached with genuine passion and purpose. The ripple effect. Charlotte's discovery didn't remain a private family matter for long. Her newfound confidence and purposefulness were noticed by palace staff, royal watchers, and eventually the public. During a family appearance at a Commonwealth event, a photographer captured Charlotte wearing the ring while engaging in an animated conversation with young delegates from several African nations. The image, which showed her gesturing expressively while the ring caught the light, went viral on social media. Royal jewelry experts were immediately intrigued by the unfamiliar piece, leading to speculation about its origins. Rather than try to suppress curiosity, the palace decided to gradually release information about Queen Margaret's story, framing it as an inspiring example of royal service and sacrifice that had previously been kept private out of respect for Margaret's wishes. The public response was overwhelmingly positive. Margaret's story resonated particularly strongly with young women, who saw in her an example of someone who had used her position and privilege to advance causes larger than herself. Educational institutions began incorporating her diplomatic achievements into their curricula, and several scholarships were established in her name. Lessons for the future. As Charlotte grew older and more comfortable with her public role, she began to understand that Margaret's ring was more than just a beautiful piece of jewelry, it was a symbol of the evolution of royal duty and the importance of authentic service. The ring reminded her that the monarchy's strength lay not in its rigid adherence to tradition, but in its ability to adapt and find new ways to serve the changing needs of its people. Margaret's story also provided valuable lessons about the nature of sacrifice and service. Rather than seeing royal duty as a limitation on personal freedom, Charlotte began to understand it as an opportunity to amplify her impact on causes she cared about. The ring served as a daily reminder that every generation of royals faced the same fundamental question: how to use their unique position to make a meaningful difference in the world. The hidden network. Perhaps the most surprising discovery in Margaret's journals was the revelation that she had not worked alone. Her diplomatic successes had been supported by a network of like-minded royal women from across Europe, all working quietly behind the scenes to prevent conflicts and advance humanitarian causes. This network, which Margaret called the Invisible Crown, had operated for decades, with each member contributing their unique skills and positions to collective efforts. Charlotte learned that several of these women were still alive, now elderly but still committed to the principles Margaret had helped establish. Through carefully arranged meetings, Charlotte began to understand the scope of work that royal women had been quietly conducting for generations, work that rarely made headlines but had nevertheless shaped international relations and humanitarian policy. This discovery gave Charlotte a sense of belonging to something larger than just her own family's legacy. She realized that she was part of a tradition of royal women who had used their positions not just for ceremonial purposes, but for active engagement with the world's most pressing challenges. Looking forward. Today, Princess Charlotte continues to wear Queen Margaret's ring for special occasions, each time remembering the lessons it represents about courage, service, and the true meaning of royal duty. The ring has become a symbol not just of family history, but of the ongoing evolution of the monarchy and its role in the modern world. As she prepares for her own future responsibilities, Charlotte often reflects on Margaret's words from the cottage journals. The crown is not something we wear on our heads, but something we carry in our hearts, a commitment to serve not because we must, but because we choose to make a difference. The ring that once belonged to a forgotten queen has become a bridge between past and future, reminding each new generation that true royal service lies not in following predetermined paths, but in having the courage to forge new ones when the times demand it. For Princess Charlotte, Queen Margaret's ring is more than a piece of jewelry. It's a promise to continue the work of strong royal women who understood that the greatest privilege of their position was the opportunity to use it in service of others. In discovering her favorite grandma, Charlotte found not just a family member she had never known, but a role model whose example would guide her own approach to royal life. The ring serves as a tangible connection to that legacy, a daily reminder that the most meaningful royal traditions are those that inspire each generation to reach beyond what came before and create something even better for those who will follow.